to invite our next plenary speaker, who is my dear friend and colleague, Maria Fernandez, from the University in Santiago de Chile. And she is actually trained in evolutionary psychology. She has done lots of interesting research, and her main topic is jealousy, relationships, dynamics of relationships, but also love, which sometimes happens in relationships, right? So at least I've heard so. So it is my pleasure to call you over here. Thank you very much for this invitation, for joining us, and we are looking forward to your talk.
So this is working. Hello. Thank you, Yarka. Thank you, Dennis, everyone, for having me here. It's a pleasure to come back after so many years of confinement. So I'm really in love with Brazil, which is the topic I'm going to be talking about. So let's get started. So that's the topic of my jealousy. What's love got to do, of my presentation, what's love got to do with jealousy? Because I usually talk about jealousy, but my hidden agenda has been actually, to talk about love. So that's what I intend to discuss. And I left a lot of time for the discussion. I think I want to provoke you and discuss about this because there's a lot of important information. First of all, where does the love part of psychology comes from? Well, actually, it was from the study of pair bonding, because usually psychologists do not speak about love. Curiously, that's the area of philosophers. So that's one important point. Usually when you find pair bonding, or the next word that we're going to be talking about, which is attachment, you refer to something that is very, very well known in nature. Primatologists, ethologists were the first ones to discover and to account for this early bonding for the social, here it is, okay. Early bonding for the social development and survival of different animals, from birds to mammals and to us, the humans. So here are some examples of these beautiful images we find on Facebook. And love, it's everywhere. You can find it on reptiles, you can find it on birds, you can find it on lions. These are the cutest pictures. I have a little baby, so I couldn't resist. My husband tells me I think she's a primate. She is a very nice primate. I will show her next. But who was the first one in study love? Actually, it was Harry Harlow. He was a behaviorist, and he was the first one to conduct a serious experiment about love. And what he found was the basis for all we know in the present, because he had, I'm not going to go through the experiment, we all know it. If not, you can look at the monkey experiments from Harry Harlow and you can see all the videos. I usually show it, but I didn't want to be reiterative with that. So what he found is that some behavioral observational studies, when you have a monkey race on the floor with of a wire cage naked, survives with difficulty. But if it does during the first day of the 5 days, he dies. And that's usually when you must have some support. Then, if a wire mesh cone is inserted, he will do much better. But if you cover it with plush fabric, strong, healthy, happy babies thrive. So what's the point about this? It takes more than a baby and a cone to make a normal monkey. We were struck by the possibility that beyond the bubbling fountain of the breast or bottle, which was the working hypothesis of feeding, it's actually physical contact, which might be a very important variable in the development of the infant's attachment to the mother. So that is a premise that today it's very well documented, not only in other animals, but in humans. So that phylogeny that we share with many other species is what we can use to understand our ontogeny, actually, or our developmental trajectories. So here I told you I'm crazy about this site, about animal bonding. You have giraffes, you have different rodents, you have elephants, you have gorillas. So this is a recent BBC special document where we're finding that animal friendships are surprisingly like our own. What's behind animal friendships, or what's behind this bonding in animals? Well, it's actually this behavior that we call pair bonding, or in humans, we call it attachment. And what's that? That's love in general. So here we have some examples from that special documentary and papers where, for example, in birds, just picking each other, it's very important. Dolphins will actually maintain communication over 500 meters with each other, and they maintain conversations, and they relocate each other. Well, wolves and squirrels do much better when they have close allies and they share with them. So this is the basis of our human love. So how do non-human animals protect love? That's where jealousy comes into play. Well, actually, let me show you this.
He's clearly excited to see.
Did you see the experiment, or, yeah? With a, okay, sorry, yeah. Actually, just with a fake, very grotesque dog toy, you can make a dog jealous, you can make a monkey jealous. I mean, there's so many examples. So this is the basis for pair bonding. I mean, we have a mechanism that actually tries to recover this love, this pair bonding, which is jealousy. And that's where my argument will go to. So for example, you have monkeys where actually, you have dogs where actually if you present a cylinder, you know, like just something that looks like a non-social rival, or if you present another dog, a fake dog, very much like the one you saw on the video, you actually get the jealous response. So usually the cylinder is about curiosity, but this one has something where dogs show jealous behavior specifically towards the jealous-inducing interaction between their owners and a social rival. That's what actually activates this emotion. So the idea is like, well, why it happens with other animals? Well, in chimpanzees, it's also been documented. What about our early human roots? You know, developmentally speaking, when we're small. So here's my daughter. This is the chance to show my little daughter. And here we have the intense pair bonding that happened a couple of days ago, and I couldn't resist. Is when kids saw mom, and they were just running to her to physically get proximity with her very happily. This is love. This is the initial parts of love. So what do we do? Actually, Sybil Hart done some very neat experiments about children jealousy. So she will have First of all, she realized that jealousy emerges when the attachment system is getting set in infants and fear of strangers is appearing. And that's usually between 6 months to 9 months of age. That early, we can actually differentiate, and we start having this intense love for one person in particular, who tends to be the primary caregiver, which in our societies is usually the mother. Yeah. So on these experiments, 6 to 9 months is usually the earliest time when a sibling can be born. So the functional utility, or no, I don't want to say that. The function of jealousy will be to actually protect that moment in which we can actually have to share for the first time the love of a primary caregiver with another person. So what happens? We replicated these experiments in Chile right before the pandemic, and we had we had two situations. First, we have a social rival, a non-social rival, which is a book. This is a much sophisticated book. In our case, I cannot show the experiments because they're kids with their mothers. We had the mother read the book while the kid was interacting with her. And the other condition was the mother interacting with a fake baby doll that looks very fake, but for the baby, it's another child. So following these situations, look, this is prototypically what happens. First,
But how do you think they'll react?
continues going.
Shower attention on this lifelike doll.
So those are the examples of the behavior. Sorry, it's not, I couldn't go on. Then you can see expression.
These babies are now showing clear signs of jealousy.
It's very distressful. You can tell, kids are very expressive. We ran this experiment, and we saw something like gaze, approach, gaining physical contact, arousal, vocalizations, and changes in the affective state in terms of jealousy. And this is the data, the actual data. So it's very interesting. We coded the videos of the mothers interacting in these two conditions, and there are very strong, significant differences between how the kids react to the non-social rival, which is a cooking book, the mother reading a cooking book, while in comparison to a social rival, which is the lifelike baby doll. So, this is very important in terms of the stability across cultures, because these experiments have been conducted since 1999 in the US. In Europe, there are some replications in Germany. And now we have done it in Chile. So, it's usually the response. We have other animals. So what about friendships? What happens in friendships? Yeah, I have the models here. You can ask for their signatures. Well, friendships have been studied in many ways. But what's the function of friendship? During infancy and puberty, developmentally, we start developing new bonds with our peers. And what happens at that moment? Well, actually, there has been many studies, particularly by Tubi and Cosmides, about the idea that this intense bond we generate with our friends is actually a way to acquire social allies that would uninterestedly help us in times of need. So feeling replaced And particularly in what is unique with a friend is what causes jealousy. It's the loss of the same bond, but in a different context, in a different kind of relationship. So throughout development, we will see that in general, these friendships are like almost like family. The same way we feel with brothers and sisters, and there's a lot of literature on this topic in the last 3 years. I don't know, probably because we were confined, so we had the time to write about this. But usually friendships are formed by like-minded individuals. You know, it's very similar to us, and particularly there's something about friendships that we bond with each other, and we're very fond of our friends. We can have drunken friends, borrachos, and it's okay, it's our friend, you know. We tend to be very empathic with our friends. A different thing is our romantic partners, but I'm not gonna go into that because that's more on clinical. So in attitudes, they're similar. On another level, they're deep engagements. You know, they make us feel good. For me, it's been so happy to re-encounter my friends, my academic friends in this Congress that I keep hugging everyone. So I'm sorry about that. Like, I made sure I don't have COVID before coming here. So I hope, everything gets like that. I got my vaccines just in case. So friends share with us a worldview, mental coordination. Usually with our friends, we know what they're thinking before we actually acknowledge what's going on. And that's a very important kind of love. Very important. It goes with us all of our life. It sustains prosociality. So the idea, the early experimental data actually sustained that the actual perception of an interloper in friendships is when we feel that that person is sort of replacing us in that very unique niche previously filled by oneself. So if I'm friends with Techi and we both, study love, and then I see that her and Irene are actually starting to study love after this conference, and she's my very close friends, that's going to be what generates jealousy. So usually it's on deep engagements where we can go and develop jealousy. So here we have an example of the preliminary studies about hypothetical scenarios that was done by Lias Cosmides' student back in 1999, where they manipulated the amount of time and mental coordination shared between the best friend and the interloper in 3 different conditions. First, the best friend had met a new friend and was spending a lot of social time with them, while mental coordination was maintained with the participant. So here, so here we will have, yeah, that's better. The first condition. The second one, the best friend was having mental coordination with the new friend, but social time was maintained with the friend. And on the third condition, mental coordination and social time was spent with the interloper and not with the participant. So the data is in the reverse order. It goes 1, 2, 3 here. So we have what happens when the friends are actually spending only time with the interloper. You know, the amounts of jealousy are not too high. Then we have a mental coordination with the rival or the interloper, but time is still maintained with the friend. And in the third condition, we have time plus mental coordination, which is the most jealousy-inducing condition. And I thought, yeah, I don't have it here. So then we will see, the scenario was like, imagine that your friend is at the cafeteria on Friday night, and they tell you that they want to meet this new friend that arrived to town. So they will say, you go with them, you share a cerveza or coffee, whatever, and in the first condition, you realize that your friend and the new friend are sharing mental coordination, which means they complete each other's sentence, they look at each other very friendly, and they seem to know what the other one is going to do even before they do it. So that's a mental coordination condition. So we combine that with time. You still maintain time with your friend constant. You do many things together. And in the other condition, you actually see your friend spending more time plus a mental coordination with this new friend. So in that condition, we have a very strong jealousy induction. This was the original study. They had more conditions. This was preliminary data by one of my undergraduate thesis students. But then there are also sex differences. Guess what? You know, most of the literature finds that women tend to be a little bit more jealous than men. And of course, here, they react with more jealousy. There is an interaction by sex where the mental coordination plus time with an interloper is significantly more jealousy-inducing for women. And very nice. Then, well, these are the images I like to put in between. New experimental data from our experiments in 2021. We were like, okay, we replicated these. So what's next? So we wanted to enrich these scenarios, and we made the first condition, mental coordination, plus spending time with a new friend. The second condition, spending time and mental coordination with an attractive opposite-sex rival they just met. The third condition, spending time and mental coordination with a high-status opposite-sex rival they just met, and spending most of their time watching a favorite movie, the non-social rival condition. So we mix everything. This is just preliminary studies. We need to continue. So that's the data I wanted to comment. So here we have mental coordination, the attractive rival or the high-status rival versus the movie. So there is a strong difference between these three conditions and the movie because these are all kinds of social rivals. Next, well, and that's a non-social rival, it's just a movie. Then we have a sex difference. In this sample, we have that, you see the men sample size is very small as usual, just 133 and just over 25 participants per condition. But still, we see this strong difference between the social rival and the non-social rival in the men, but no significant difference in between these conditions, the three social rivals. But in the women, is the attractive rival and the mental coordination rival, which cause the most jealousy, and between the attractive and high status rival, there is actually a difference, which is the usual sex difference we find on the base studies or everything. So that's very encouraging. I have more data I couldn't, I haven't finished. And we're conducting a series of experiments with this, but it's very encouraging because this will be like even more important in terms of the kind of bond you can have in friendships. And I'm getting to the next idea. I'm sorry. Yeah, I will talk about that later with romantic relationships. So the adaptive function of friendships seem to be from reciprocal altruism. That's been the working hypothesis that explains why we form friendships. And love is the emotion that binds friends together. And of course, if we change what is important for this relationship, these friendships, and we integrate a potential rival, we will have jealousy, which is actually an emotion to prevent being replaced in what's unique, being in the same wavelength or mental coordination. That's the subjective report of how we usually define our friendships. So the next kind of relationship that prevails in our lives is romantic love. So, oh, I want you to see this. I don't know if, okay, I will try not to talk because it's funny. It's not something, it's not experimental data, of course. It's from TikTok. Oh, that killed the suspense. Here.
This is from the goal line.
You can tell, like, you can laugh because we all have done that with our romantic partners in our own unique ways, or not. You know, this is what babies do. This is what animals do, non-human animals do. Well, and that's what you do in your romantic relationship. So this is really neat because the developmental stability across ontogeny, it's amazing. It's very similar. This is all old-fashioned data. I mean, we've known this for forever, but it's very strong. And it's actually, I mean, imagine your partner, your actual romantic partner, was doing that with someone. Even your baby, if you have a baby right now and you saw that there were baby talking to someone else, you know, it produces that uncomfortable feeling, which is normal and non-pathological jealousy. There's a big difference of what Dr. Costa presented yesterday, which is pathological jealousy. But this other love, jealousy relationship, it's maintained throughout our life. So here are some examples of papers. This one is back from the baby talk as a community, as a communication of intimate attachment. Comes from the 90s, and that data has been demonstrated, you know, and we do that with romantic partners. And actually, it's in those things where we can infer our partners attaching to someone else. Those little things that are maintained throughout ontogenic development. Another thing you remember in the baby videos, the baby experiments, physical contact, touch, yeah, touching each other, it's very consistently being found to be important for love, for the development of attachment, which is the most closely related definition we have for the scientific study of love. So, actually, when we touch someone, we reduce their uncomfortable feelings, and we can actually reduce the jealousy. You know, if you have Marco and Yarka there, no matter who I present here, you know, they're going to be fine. But then if you have Marco there looking at someone, and, you know, it's an uncomfortable feeling, that's all. It's nothing big, you know, unless they're polyamorous, but that's another thing. So, so what is the idea? I mean, the literature, this is a paper, a review from April last year. The idea is that in the study of romantic love, there are proximate mechanisms and ultimate functions. And it's at both levels where jealousy is operating. We have the comparative evidence. We usually study the mechanism of pathological jealousy. But we forget about these other instances where love, it's very important for our human development, for our pro-social development, and we're just, jealousy is what prevents us or sort of regulates interactions, love interactions and everything. So, here. this is a paper I really like from Fletcher in 2015, where he defines some of the uses that romantic love might have for the human species. First of all, romantic love is a powerful commitment device. It's composed of passion, intimacy, and caregiving, and that's what they found in the evidence. It's universal, and it's associated with pair bonding across cultures. Romantic love automatically suppresses effort and attention given to alternative partners. It's really cool because, you know, we have these dopaminergic systems. Like, I was looking at the picture of my daughter and I could do that. Well, I can also do that with my romantic object of affection. Romantic love has distinct emotional, behavioral, hormonal, and neuropsychological features, and that's also very well documented. And successful pair bonding predicts better health and survival across cultures for both adults and offspring that can actually have a romantic love and attachment. So we were last year, no, actually this year. Yeah, we thought about this while we were confined, but we were confined, so data was going to be like really bad. So this year we decided to ask people in an open-ended question to name terms associated with romantic love. So we had a Qualtrics experiment, a Qualtrics questionnaire, I'm sorry, and we told them like, first, like, hello, this is the research. We didn't say anything before, and we said, can you define 3 terms that you associate to romantic love? And what happened? Look at this. Caring, trust, respect, partnership. They're not so bad. They're like around 30 terms, but most terms got 1 or 2 mentions. These are consistently mentioned across the 3 terms in the 3 columns. So caring, trust, respect, partnership. I was surprised because these are young people. These are mostly students which are responding to this. And then we continue. We asked them some other data. We haven't had time. It was recent. We haven't had time to analyze yet. But we also asked them to rank order terms that appear in the literature related to romantic love. So it was attachment, caring, sex, passion, intimacy, commitment, pleasure, trust, and jealousy. Jealousy, of course, here is the evil. We all think that if there is love, there is no jealousy, but that's, you know, that's completely wrong. I say, look at the babies, you know, and look at ourselves in terms of non-pathological jealousy. That's, you know, it's like a motivation to protect a relationship. That's all. So what happened? Here we have trust, again, commitment, and intimacy. Those are the first 3 ranking emotions, and jealousy is the last ranking emotion. So it's very interesting because we are aware of the romantic love relationship with these other pair bonding emotions in humans, but we're convinced that jealousy is out of the picture. So in this context, jealousy is actually an adaptive emotion to protect close attachment bonds. We've said that over and over again. You know, this can be real or it can be imagined. It induces distress and reaching out, guarding the loved one. It can be a friend, it can be your primary caregiver or your romantic partner, or in the case of pets, your owner. It is motivated by the threat posed by an attractive rival. We know that. Attractive to whatever we define as attractive. So when there are sex differences in what is attractive, high status or, you know, being really dominant or having money or being physically attractive, whatever, it's important for the other sex or for the same sex, you know, it's what's gonna induce jealousy. And it is about recovering affection and driving the rival away. That's a function. With kids, it's very important. When you read about the jealousy literature in kids, there were writings of Darwin about his children that have been rediscovered, in which jealousy has a particular feature in infancy. It generates, if the mother, if the caregiver is sharing positive emotions with the rival, the kid is it's in a more negative emotional state. So it's usually when we are in positive relationships, others get contagious, or we have an emotional contagion. But even compersion, is that the term? Yes. So compersion will be, I would like to know what happens with this. Are we going to be fine with this? It's something we have to actually train ourselves to be comfortable with. In kids, it doesn't happen naturally. In friendships, we have to test it. But in romantic relationships, we just want to recover that affection while we're in love. Yeah, no one goes like, oh yeah, I was so happily married or having this wonderful relationship, and I'm so happy because he found someone else. The exception will be, Justin's studies. I'm just thinking about this now. Okay. But so romantic jealousy emerges from the perception of a specific loss of valued mating partners. We know that about romantic relationships. And it's based in the case of humans, parental investment theory, well, actually, sexually reproducing animals, is very well explained by Trivers' parental investment theory. So there are differences, the loss of commitment and provisioning, and the loss of sexual exclusivity. This is the classic data that we have discussed before. Oh, nothing to do with that. That was the one that I corrected. 1 second. Let me take that out, and I will go back to it, because this got from another. Well, why it doesn't take it? Well, anyways. In other kinds of relationships, we will find that jealousy, for example, the data that Jarka studied, we found that jealousy is related to the kind of relationship we're thinking about, if it's same-sex relationships or opposite-sex relationships. It matters who is the rival, if the rival is the same sex, and it matters, the sexual orientation. So everything, will come into this formula or this mechanism to protect what we value. So I have no further premises about that. We need to develop them, but it is about regaining what is special about the relationship. So it's what we call love. We usually call love to that kind of bonding. So here we have some of the nice internet citations about jealousy and songs. I'm jealous of the nights that I don't spend with you. I'm wondering who you lay next to. You see, it's that special place when we sleep with someone, where we share nights with someone. It's very romantic. Oh, I'm jealous of the nights. Then I'm jealous of the rain that falls upon your skin. Very magical. It's closer than my hands have ever been. I'm jealous of the rain. And it feels like jealousy, and it feels like I can't breathe, and I'm down on my knees, and it feels like jealousy. So, what will be the idea? Well, the message will be understanding relationships with an evolutionary perspective leads us to understand love as attachment, or pair bonding. Is a conserved emotional system designed by evolution to sustain pair bonding in social species. As a social species, we have affective experience and behavioral motivations that are fully specialized to form attachment relationships. Jealousy has the function of protecting closeness, attachment, compromise, actually what we understand as love. And jealousy is not pathology, it is a crucial emotional response, an internal regulatory variable that will calibrate love. So, the conclusions, and I'm so good with time, will be that jealousy has a lot to do with love. It follows from initial pair bonding to attachment to primary caregivers, friends, romantic partners, and our children. So that's it. Thank you for your attention. And I would like to thank YARCA, the organizers, my co-researchers, and everyone that is involved in this research.
Thank you very much for a very nice talk. I really love your research, so this is great. Well, before questions, I can't resist. I have to ask one. In the beginning, you were talking about the jealousy in small kids, right? Especially when there is another kid than the other kids, or a doll, actually, right? It doesn't really matter if it's a real one. The rival actually can be quite imaginary, right? It doesn't even need to be real. But so yeah, so this sibling competition and sibling rivalry is quite well known. My question is, what about the poor husbands? I mean, when the child is born, right, the mother is totally in love with the child, and then the husband feels somehow abandoned, alone, probably jealous. Is there any research actually about jealousy feelings and these like feelings of abandonment of the fathers, right? Especially these like newborn fathers.
I love it. No, let's do the research. I know yes, please, like don't forget about this, like someone writes this down. It's very good because experiment, you know, we might find a way because it's very important. I mean, you can see the extensions of this perspective. We're always centered in the pathological sides of jealousy, but that jealousy, of course, you know, if you were used to having this pair-bonded relationship, comes the little intruder, there must be something going on. Actually, and that's what I can answer for now, in the close relationships literature, one of the biggest stressors is the birth of a child for the pair bond, or for the relationship satisfaction. Usually that stresses everything. So that would be a very good way of anticipating what might be the answer to your question.
Thank you. I guess so. Questions?
Thank you. I was thinking in Portuguese, and what you mentioned about the mental coordination that between how did you measure it? You didn't talk about that, no?
How could you operationalize
exactly.
mental coordination? Yeah, that was
because
missing.
It's a very interesting concept, but difficult to
you know,
to
the actual vignette or the hypothetical scenario got lost from my presentation. This was an earlier version, but it's mental coordination is defined as what makes us unique with a friend. It comes from that thesis work. That, you know, and now I think Krems, she's doing some research on this, but it was defined back in the late 90s as being on the same wavelength, like having the same interests, understanding each other without looking at ourselves. So it's sort of like, from a cognitive perspective, it will be like thinking the same.
Okay, but in your research, how did you measure it?
Okay,
I understand the concept,
I understand,
but
yeah.
was it observation or questionnaire? What
Questionnaire.
was your instrument?
It's a different scenario. So in one scenario, you have your friend and an arrival actually spending time together. Feeling close. Your friend tells you, I'm really close to this new person I met, and she's so fun. We think the same things, and we enjoy the same things, and she knows how I'm feeling even before I tell her how I'm feeling. That's the mental coordination scenario. The non-mental coordination scenario, it's meeting someone with which you spend time only. So you go to a gym, to parties, but your friend still shares this special interest with you, and you still, when your friend needs advice or needs to know what's going on, your friend comes to you. That's the condition, the mental coordination condition. It's a little bit more elaborate, but as I told you, I don't have the exact scenario here. I had it, but it got lost on one of my versions of the presentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I still didn't understand how you did it. But in your research, how did you compute it? I didn't understand.
Okay, we measure how jealous. We have three. This is a between groups design. So some people get the condition in which you know that your best friend, your best same-sex friend, is sharing this special connection with this new person that came to live in your city. In the other condition, your friend still maintains the mental coordination, this sharing of special interests with you. And in the other condition, they share both mental coordination plus time with the new person. And we measure the amounts of jealousy they feel. That's the instruction. I'm sorry, I didn't understand it before. So that's how we got an indirect measure of jealousy.
I'll see the paper after.
I will send it to you. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry.
Just a quick comment on the Yarker's question. There are studies of paternal postpartum depression, with fathers getting depressed postpartum, and one of the factors is the mom now focusing all her attention on the infant. So that was just a quick comment.
Thanks.
That makes sense. More questions? Commentaries? Where? Oh, I didn't see you.
I'm just curious about any differences between the friendship ties of men versus women. Stereotypes, I don't know how well they're backed up, that men usually have larger groups of friends, whereas women have fewer but more intense friendships. The argument that men's friendships are more based on same interests, while women's friendships are based, I'm not quite sure whether it was time as you would be. So I'm just wondering if
No, I think, we need to, I just started getting these new scenarios, and actually one of the difficulties I have is with all these new denominations. So, of course, that will be very important about the function. It's probably, not the function, but the sex differences that you might find in the kinds of friendships. So I am definitely willing to look into that. I don't have any data on it.
the other thing, I'd like to see when you get it. The other thing is about the idea that women often, in movies at least, are always saying they're jealous of their husbands, but of his work, not of another woman. Women are jealous of their husband's work because it takes all of his time. And she's jealous not of another woman, but of his work. I don't know if
Sure. I mean, all these, all these scenarios will be absolutely valid. So we started in the original study of Burkett in 1999. She actually had a very nice combination of scenarios. So she had sex of the rival experimentally manipulated. I did not include these because they were like, it was just preliminary stuff that we were doing. So it will be very, we need to design a real experiment. This was an online experiment. All the data I presented was online. So I want to bring people to a lab again and have more control conditions and everything. So that's definitely important. And actually on the jealousy literature, I didn't talk, Bram Bunk and some of his colleagues in Holland have actually studied job-related jealousy when your working partners become involved. For example, you were very unique to your boss and you used to, I don't know, go and play golf together. And now someone else comes and replaces in that, your boss no longer wants to play golf with you, and that will be preliminary data says that will make you more jealous. So it makes sense.
Other questions? It's actually also interesting that it seems that in lesbian couples, sometimes it's actually difficult to define when the relationship, the romantic relationship starts, because they start as friends, right? Very close, intimate friends. And sometimes they don't even know when started actually some romantic relationship, because it's almost the same, right? So it's more based actually on friendships, which is nice. So if there is no other question, then I will deliver standardized present that we and a little bit alcoholic present as we have for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me.